Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Natsu Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about OnePunch-Man Season 2, Episode 6. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with the tournament. Obviously, it opens with Siriu going up against Max. And obviously, Max has it in his mind that he wants to go through this tournament because he wants to get stronger. Because the stronger he is, the more people he can protect. And obviously, that last episode talked about this, but I forgot to talk about it. Was like our kind of background information on Siriu is like he won didn't he win the tournament 4 times in a row? But then he went. And that was 7 years ago. He won it 4 times in a row. But then for the past 3 years, he's just been basically goofing off and lazing about. And I think that's going to be the interesting thing where he seems like he's all about believing in the power of strength. Just power is power. And he enjoys getting stronger just so he can have an easygoing life. And it's going to be really interesting to see that. I don't know if clashing of ideals is going to be is the right word, but his perspective versus Saitama. Because Saitama, yes, does the whole hero thing because it's fun, but he also has always wanted to be a hero. So there is he believes in heroism and that perspective on things, which I don't think Siriu does, because all Siriu believes in is strength. That's all he believes in. He doesn't have lofty ambitions other than, hey, I just want to coast through life. Funny enough, Saitama kind of wants to fight someone strong. He's trying new things just for the purpose of fighting someone strong, but he does step in and do the right thing and believes in doing the right thing and protecting people and doing, he believes in the heroic idealism. So it's going to be interesting to see, despite his very laissez-faire approach, going up against someone who has an extremely laissez-faire approach to everything. Because he kind of had such a cocky attitude about just kind of being superior. And obviously you have conflating people also too, but he really easily knocks Max out with one hit. And he's just I guess I'm stronger. And so the tournament progresses through. Sourface has his match against the bit guy. I love that he's worried because that guy is big, and that guy's worried because of the scary look on Sourface's face. But when it's all said and done, it was a very sportsman-like win where they're both crying and kind of celebrating each other, but Sourface came out the winner, and Saitama missed the whole fight because he was in the bathroom. So I think I talked about this in the season 1 finale, how season 1 doesn't really skip over thing, at least in anything in the manga, at least what I saw, but they had said season 2 on it will skip quite a bit. And I'm curious if this is kind of one of those instances of some of these fights are probably expanded upon at least a little bit more, or maybe they're just hand waved away in the manga as well. I'm curious. Saitama's fights against the guy who's kind of being betted as because he's won the tournament twice in a row and he's expected to be the winner here. And I love that during the fight, obviously he's talking about he crushes anyone he feels isn't putting forth the effort and isn't essentially serious about this. And then cut to all the while he's saying this, Saitama's fiddling with the belt because he's oh, I had to untie it to go to the bathroom. I don't know how to tie it, but I was oh, that seems okay. And the guy's cool, I'm going to show you my technique. He's are you an amateur? He's yeah, this is the first time for me. I want to see your martial arts technique. And the guy's just showing off he doesn't actually do the attacks. He's oh, I have this technique that will crush the bones in your leg. I'll do this, I'll do that. And then he goes oh, I do this karate chop to your head. And then immediately Saitama one hits him. He's yo, don't touch my hair. That's what he's crap. I didn't mean to win the fight that quickly. I was supposed to just actually experience the guy's martial arts, but he told me what he was going to do and softly did the techniques without actually doing the techniques. He just at first I was almost wondering, I'm home dude, what was his name? It wasn't something Kazubuki or Baku's. I'm going to completely butcher it. In retrospect, you know who he kind of reminds me of? He reminds me of Hercule from Dragon Ball. I guess Mr. Satan, because he'll always be Hercule to me because of the dub. So I didn't, wasn't until years later I found out, oh, his name in Japanese is Mr. Satan, whatever the case may be. He reminds me of him, and I was almost wondering, is he going to be full of shit? Does he pay off his opponents? I thought we're going to go full Hercule here, where I mean, Hercule's a decent fighter, but there's so many other people more powerful than him, especially our Z fighters and stuff. But I was wondering if there was going to be some correlation here. But it's like, no, he probably really was the real deal, but he was immediately taken down like he was nothing. And the crowd was speechless. Siryu's interest was like, oh, he took that guy down in one blow. Another fight he won with one punch. He's like, yeah, I want to do that too. Because I guess he's trying to entertain himself, trying to handicap himself in the regards of like, hey, I want to like give myself kind of, you know, because his fight later on is against Snek, and when you like, Snek points out like all you're doing is dodging. He's like, oh, I just want to see what your skills actually are, and it does seem like he does go out of his way to end it with one hit. So I think he was just biding time. It's almost like he's, like I said, he's kind of a cocky asshole because he's like toying with Snek, because it ends up being this larger conversation, and this is something that Genos says early on in the episode too, is that this guy is taking down A-class heroes, and it's like, right, I'm not worried about him being like Master Saitama, but he does think that, well, Saitama is as powerful as he is, and the Hero Association had no idea he was out there doing stuff as a regular civilian, because he was just doing the hero thing as a side, like kind of just for fun as a side gig. And it kind of showcases like there's so many powerful people out there who are just civilians that you only know about the strong, powerful heroes because they're part of like the larger organization. Their names are out there and stuff. But there's so many powerful people who just slip through the cracks. So, and the fact is that he can easily take down pro level A people. It's like, what does that mean about where he stands in the grand scheme of things? But that plays into a focal point of that conversation between Snek and Siri, because sadly, Snek used to be confident in his position as a hero. He believed, like, I had the power, I was strong enough to protect people, but now with every new, like, enemy that's gotten there, it's like, oh, enemies that I have no chance of defeating, enemies that even S-class heroes have trouble beating. Then he's like, oh, I can't even beat random citizens, which is sad, because the one random citizen you try to toy with and mess with was a new hero who was C-class, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, but Saitama is the biggest asterisk there is when it comes to, like, power level and scale, you know, so all that wrecked his confidence, and he's kind of starting to question, like, does the world even need heroes when, like, there are powerful, like, civilians like this? It's like, when they're able to kind of potentially fight these monsters and protect themselves, then what role do heroes have? And then you have Seiryu kind of like I said, twisting the knife on that doubt of being like, yeah, we'll be fine. And he's like, what, you think heroes should just, like, sit back and let people get killed? But Seiryu's perspective is, no, because we have survived up until now. Sure, heroes and whatnot, but we will survive, because he's like, essentially, at the end of the day, heroes, they don't matter. What matter is strength and strong people. And I think it's kind of interesting because it showcases him. It showcases Tatsumaki and Saitama as just kind of like these ridiculously powerful heroes, and kind of saying like that will be all that kind of survives. Those will be the ones who survive, and then he immediately takes down Snek. So you kind of, like I said, it feels bad because it's just like Snek's idealism about heroes and what role they play in this world, but then like I said, a very laissez-faire Seiryu perspective on it, just kind of like leaves a sour taste in your mouth, because he comes off like such a cocky douchebag that it's just like he's besmirching the name of heroes and what they do, and it's just like the timing is interesting with everything going on with the Monster Association doing what they're doing, kind of destroying the reputation of heroes, taking down heroes systematically. So all the while this was going down, word had gotten to the tournament. So I guess like maybe the city finally had its attack with monsters hitting the city, because now because I think this is in City C. So I guess like monsters start popping up here. So that's why the tournament hadn't been shut down. That was a question I had last episode. You would have thought word would have gotten there, but it was other cities, other heroes are dealing with it, but maybe the news hadn't traveled to them yet that all these heroes are getting defeated. But you have Genos going off and immediately dealing with all of the monsters himself, single-handedly defeating them. The one that kind of gave him the most trouble was that guy who was slinging his blades, because he messed up Genos' arms, and then Genos took the brunt of the attack with his head, and then burned the guy to a crisp. Pretty much every enemy he just kind of incinerated. And then we got to the final monster, who was like this big cockroach guy, but he's extremely fast, and Genos can't keep up with him. And then for him, it's like, I have to use the thing that the doctor gave me to kind of equip, but he's like, I don't want to. And now we find out what it is. It's a sticky adhesive that he's like, it's for him, it's like, it was a countermeasure that was probably it was given to him after the fight with Sonic. And it's like, using this would mean like I have to admit that Sonic is fast, and like having to give that guy any compliments at all. But for Genos, it's like I gotta put all that shit aside, put my pride aside, use whatever I've got tactically to win fights because I need to get stronger. And so he attacks the cockroach, but seems like the cockroach like separated himself from his legs and bounced. Obviously makes a lot of sense too, considering cockroaches are very like survive anything. And obviously I've referenced this series before, but it just makes me immediately think of Jungle Juice, because there's a character who has cockroach abilities. Once again, if you're unfamiliar, Jungle Juice is a webtoon manhwa about like humans who've been infected with like essentially like insect abilities. They kind of fuse with different insects, and one of the main characters, she's fused with cockroaches, specifically like a crap ton of cockroaches. It's a whole thing. So it just kind of immediately made me think of that. But then when like Genos, because his perspective on this is, okay, I did all this, I didn't want Master to be worried about this, so now this is taken care of, the tournament can continue, and I can go back and watch Master's match. But he immediately gets run through, and initially I thought that might have been Tatsumaki, because she's on the way, because another thing I completely forgot to talk about last episode is Fubuki and her squad showed up to deal with that like succubus-esque, I don't know, succubus might be the right word, monster. But sadly, her whole team that she built immediately got taken care of, and they're under her spell. And I think Fubuki was in a complicated spot where like she's trying not to go full force because she wants to protect her people, but then also like this leaves an opening for this thing to like lash her up with its whip, trying to take control of her. But the problem is, it said the one thing it shouldn't have said, and is basically like, oh, I'm going to use you as bait to get your sister, and that pissed her off. Obviously, she has an inferiority complex when it comes to her sister, so she kicks in even more of her power. But also, she knows, like, right, my sister always shows up when I get injured, when I suffer any damage, so here she is, and she's just blowing stuff up, ripping through the city, making her way there. That's why I thought maybe she accidentally ran through Genos. It's like, no, that was a different monster in general. Not unless we find out the twist was she did run through him and that monster just took credit for it, but whatever the case may be. I'm assuming it really was that monster. But Tatsumaki shows up and obviously like defeated any monsters on her way, and this succubus-esque like monster is kind of scared, being like, oh my god, like she's even more of a monster than I thought. Like we knew she was powerful, but we kind of underestimated it. And she's immediately like, yo, Fubuki, back away, just go home, I got this. It's like, oh yeah, you keeping around that, basically that squad of losers, and she's about to attack, and Fubuki's like, yo, don't hurt them, please don't attack them. And what does she do? She flings them into buildings, and it's like, yo, I didn't attack them. And it's like, all the enemy got away, and she kind of looks down upon her sister, and it's like, it's sad because she's like, yeah, like when those losers wake up, tell them to kind of skedaddle because all they do is get in your way. And I think for Fubuki, it's a whole thing of like, right, even all the power and grouping she's amassed, which obviously partway through the fight would also trigger some of her power and her kind of getting a little more serious, was thinking about what Saitama said to her like episode 3. So like some of that was getting to her. And I think the whole like those so far above her kind of looking down upon her, but like Saitama didn't like necessarily look down upon her. She actually kind of, I think, admires Saitama. And because like despite being so overwhelmingly powerful, he doesn't like look down upon her like the same way her sister does. And so it's just, but it's like also this thing of everything she's done to amass power in the B class kind of amounted to nothing, considering like, right, so like your people are so heavily like quickly taken care of, and it's like you've come to care for those people, and now it's like, but all that I've done hasn't really amounted to anything, because have I made any progress getting closer to my sister? I mean, and to be fair, she's already admitted it during that episode 3, like she was too afraid to like take the steps further in any higher ranking, because it's like if I get into the A class, I have to deal with the monsters there, and this is just a reminder of just how much of a big gap between her and her sister. But once again, her sister's a monster in her own regard. So with all of that, we also have the situation where it's revealed that, like, yeah, the monsters have lost some people, but they're on the winning side of this. They've taken down a lot of heroes. Once again, like in totality, combining the S class heroes and the A class hero, there's only what, 55 in total. Once again, like 17 S, 38 A's, and it's like those are your heaviest hitters. I mean, obviously you have B rank people like Fubuki, who's pretty strong, but even she obviously struggled a little during this whole situation. So once again, not every S class hero has stepped on the field, and I think we're probably going to see a few more. But you have someone like Genos got taken down, so did Metal Bat. Also Metal Knight, but also like that was just one of his robots, but they're still claiming that victory because I mean, every time we see the two of the three times we saw Metal Knight show up last season, he was using that particular robot. Because he used a different one in the season finale, if I remember correctly. Whatever the case may be, like, I don't know if that's like his strongest robot, and probably isn't. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So taking that one down is still paramount to some form of accomplishment. Who knows if that's like the strongest like armor suit that he has or not. But that's another victory. That's at least 3 S's they've taken down. So also picking up too was the whole conversation about the kid that got kidnapped. That guy, like, he isn't an executive, isn't he? Or maybe he's like a powerful contributor, because they basically said like that guy whose son got kidnapped makes up like, I think he gives like 70% of like, I don't think it's like percentage. I think it's just 70% of like the overall, I think, income that, or like not sponsorship, but like the money people give to it, the Hero Association. He's like he contributes like 7% of it. So that's why I'm like, I don't know if that's like, him as his position as an executive, because I was under the impression he was, or is he just like an outside person who basically sponsors the Hero Association and kind of invest in it, but he's not an actual executive. The way they talked about him in this episode made it seem like he wasn't one. So, because a guy that definitely got attacked, like, what was that, episode 3, was one, but this guy I don't think is. So that might have been confusion on. That's a little. I'm a little confused on that part. But obviously, one of the executives was like, "Hey, why don't we bring in every A class and above hero?" But someone was like, "Yo, do you really want to do that? Considering like all the monsters that are popping up periodically throughout the city, like, are we really going to pull back our main forces for that? That's going to leave the city vulnerable." And it's like, it's more, once again, it's about protecting them and their investments. And once again, that's more, and to them, it's more like protecting the association as an entity, including as executives, versus, the reputation blow that they might suffer from the public because they're heroes. Kind of shows where their priorities are. So yeah, like I said, it's just such an interesting insight we get into like the Hero Association, that like they tackled some of this last season, but we're kind of getting into it even more this season. So either way, it's going to be interesting to ultimately see where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.